started.
Not necessarily the shell major contractors aren't necessarily making the calls out for services like weed management. It falls on the consultant to manage full aspect of this project. And if weed control is kind of off here to the side, it's still on the consultant's task list. So if it's one thing to be in with Shell or Progress, it's another thing to get down to that consultant level where most of those contractor decisions are actually being made.
Right.
And they may be mandated to call. Like I know from our First Nations perspective, we get calls from the consultants because it's influenced by higher ups. But there's no guarantees, right?
Right.
No guarantees.
They can just say that they couldn't meet the requirements, so we had to go with someone else. Yeah. Anybody else have any experience trying to you must have some experiences with Forever Green and navigating that safety kind of trying to
Really.
No? You haven't had to or
well, the construction side takes care of all the safety stuff.
Okay.
And when I send out monitors, I say it's mostly accommodated work.
Okay. So it's mandated through their IBAs and EBAs and all that good stuff. Okay. Does everybody know what those acronyms are? IBA and impact benefits agreements and economic benefits agreements. So when a company comes in to do a major project, they have to negotiate with the Aboriginal communities on both sides of the economic piece and the impacts piece. And there's usually an agreement and requirements that are attached to both. And so through both the impact benefits agreement and the economic benefits agreement, there's certain mandated work that has to be given to the communities, things like monitors and actually going in for getting contract work and that kind of thing.
Can I ask a question to Josh? In the construction operations, obviously we know the issue related to transmission of invasive is a huge issue. I mean, we see it on forestry roads, I hear it from monitors, say I wish we could do more. Do you ever get reports or concerns, or has that ever been something that's landed in front of you saying, well, how do we deal with invasive in our contract? Does it ever come up?
Not a lot.
So it is one of those things, and this is why I wanted to have that frank discussion, because when I hear from people that are on the land that are saying, wish something more could be done. When I hear from people, and I hear actually from forest companies saying, we actually have a problem, not on the treatment, it's actually on the inventory. We don't actually know the scope of the problems that are there.
Yeah.
So this was why we actually wanted to have this opportunities thing to actually say, well, there's three pieces of this. There's the inventory, there's the treatment, and there's the data entry part.
Yeah, it hasn't really been something they look for, but after being here, I'm thinking, give everybody a booklet and make sure they start working out. You see
in their checklist, in the environmental monitoring checklist. So they could actually take the training that we offer to us. Thanks.
What about the liability issue? How are you guys managing in your different roles the liability piece? Because that seems to be another, there's the safety compliance, but there's also the liability components. And how are you guys managing that piece for those of you that?
Liability as in?
Well, I mean, I guess from your perspective, like what are the requirements and how do you manage like companies that with their liability pieces, and how do some of the smaller contractors, how do you deal with those companies that are pushing liability out more and more and more, and how are you dealing with that in a small business capacity?
I think going back to oil and gas experience, a lot of it stems from the regulators. So OGC or MOE will go out, they'll do an assessment, and they'll find operator CNRLs or Conocos, not to pick anyone out, but just people I worked for, and they will say you have X amount of problem.
Right.
So in order for you to be in compliance with your obligations, you have to remediate or fix X amount of problem. And that's where, as an environmental consultant would come in, I would come in and use a subcontractor invasive species management subcontractor to then go out and remediate the client's liability.
So we're talking in terms of that sort of liability. The Provincial Weed Control Act requires the landowner to remove any So if they're leasing, if an oil and gas company is leasing land from a Crown organization, it would be the Crown Land Organization's responsibility to ensure that those plants are being managed, and whether that's through hiring their own staff or hiring contractors to do it. So a lot of these larger groups under law have to comply with that piece of legislation and several other pieces of legislation. So because of that, I mean, it's creating a good opportunity for folks to get out there.
So who's monitoring that? Like, because some of the operations, oil and gas and resource-based industries, is still Crown land. So are there regulators coming from Crown land to check that stuff?
So I'm not sure on the situation in the north, but I know in the central interior, they'll quite often either the ministry staff will go out and monitor the sites, or they've actually issued monitoring contracts. So they'll hire somebody to go out and go to a site that's been recently managed and see what sort of plants are left. And when I was working with the ministry, they would actually, like I said, they have an ethics reporting. So when you're on the site and you're looking to see, okay, well, I see blue dye here, it's sprayed over here, but there's still like a patch of knapweed over here. He's only, or she, has only managed to eradicate 20% of this site. Well, they're going to get a 20% efficacy rating. And then you submit that back to the Crown Corporation, and then they make the contractor go back and do a second pass at the site.
When you say ministry, is that federal?
So a lot of the ministries, the resource ministries,
okay,
do contracts, which I'm going to get into in my presentation. But the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations actually has an invasive plant branch, I want to say. So they're very active in managing invasive species. The Ministry of Environment is very active. BC Parks does a lot of work. They quite often, because they're so underfunded, train their park rangers to do the work. The contracts are few and far between with BC Parks, but the opportunities are there on a good year, I guess.
Right, so there's some niche opportunities potentially.
Yeah.
So when you talk, Colleen, about the liability piece, so a contractor is hired, he's put out his liability or insurance, all of that, he's qualified. He knows he's going to be subject to an inspection. He's basically continues to be liable for efficacy.
Yep.
To what minimum standard?
In talking with folks, it's different among the ministries, but it's about an 80% efficacy rating you have to get to pass. If you don't meet the 80% efficacy, then they'll withhold payment for that site, a portion of the payment.
Okay.
That seems quite. 80% is like.
It's hard
So-
to get. It's hard to get 100% on weed. So I
It's
think
still. When you look at it, it seems like it's a low figure. 20% is like bad, but when you talk about 80%.
Well, 80%,
like-
yeah, well, meaning
yes,
they want
I
to
mean,
get
yes,
rid of
I-
80% of the plants.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying like to get the 100% rate.
Yeah,
So,
that's the goal.
Yeah, that should
Sometimes
always be trying to achieve that.
yeah.
You may never.
Yeah,
It
that's
depends
why
on the
you go-
plant too, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're not mixing properly, if you're not using
Yeah.
surfactants, you may not be
Mhm.
getting all the plants as best you could. So it happens. You have to do the best of the best, right?
you have plants growing into the grasses and tall grasses.
And they're good, and yeah, the rosettes
Yeah, you
are
can have-
small
yeah,
and it's time to go back.
Yeah.
You didn't see it,
Plus
so,
seeds that
yeah.
put in the ground.
I'm interested in what, Lee and Samara here being in the business, what you found as some of those key challenges in getting in and being effective in treatment and some of the responses from clients and that kind of thing. What's been the sort of the story?
Sure. More in the field than I ever have been.
Okay, that's pretty good. Totally putting you on the spot. That's what it is. What was some of your experience?
Challenges with, I guess, with the efficacy is, I think a lot of times customers would they expect that you have a magic wand and everything's solved, and there's no one like golden secret for, everything has a different, each chemical has their own timing and each weed has their own timing. And, so challenges, and you can't be if there is a certain time that's the right time to be spraying, you can't be everywhere at that one day. Like it's just physically impossible. So, I mean, sometimes there's unrealistic expectations or of customers, I should say. Yeah, and just for example, like if you were to spray Canada Thistle, if site got written up in Canada Thistle in the spring and you spray it and every single one of the plants dies, well, it doesn't kill the root at that time because the plant's not sucking the energy into the roots. So a month or two later, everything's going to grow again. And unless you're using some heavy residual herbicides, which companies don't want you to use because they have a liability. If there's a chemical that you're going to use that's going to stay in the ground and stay residual, then they don't want that liability either. So yeah, those are some challenges you run.
So in the north, I mean, there's a hardiness to things like scented chamomile, right?
Yeah.
And so you got a potentially longer period. Some of the northern unique issues in terms of plants. In terms of timing, if you're developing a strategy, for example, and you're setting up a business, right? So you're planning your whole season. So
I guess I don't know. Not sure what the question is.
So basically, the extent of your season for treating, right? You could go right into October.
Yeah, for certain weeds, I mean, you do need to be scented chamomile normally is an early weed. It's coming up. I mean, it grows all year, and I think you can even go to seed and restart growing again in the same season.
Right.
I think it's so the season is very early for that. But then again, with Canada Thistle, you don't want to near the end of the season when everybody thinks, oh, that plant's already gone to seed. Well, that's the ideal time to be spraying.
So I raised that as an example because there are these unique challenges in the northern here. So when you're planning your business, don't expect that just because it's, early June or whatever till, or mid-September or whatever in other places. That here you really got to plan for that full season, full treatment and return.
Yeah.
So that you can't say that I'm done on October 1st, I'm going on holidays.
It is a full growing season. Basically, as soon as things are starting to sprout in the spring, which around here is about the third week of May, and all the way until frost in mid-September, and that's kind of the season here.
To throw another thing into the mix there, a lot of groups require 2 passes, so it's hard to get those timing windows right and fitting in the second pass. Yes. So
With the weather too.
With the weather, and so there's a lot to consider.
And then the point Lee talks about is manpower and can't be every place at once, right? So you have to have more than just 1 or 2 or 3, right? You need kind of like
and you
an
also
army
need enough work to keep those people busy, so you're not employing
and
them all for
then we
1
go
week
back to
and
this,
train them all for 1 and then for a month. Yeah. No, so that is definitely challenging, as well as just the staffing capacity, I guess, too, is to have enough people trained in a short amount of time, and to have somebody that is a seasonal employee, and that it's a challenge for sure.
What do you do with your employees when you have 3 weeks?
We pray for no rain.
Would you guys consider like manual removal?
There is some of that, but it realistically is. I mean, we do some. There is mowing. As far as picking, there is some of that, but to eliminate the spraying, one site, for instance, if you were to not spray one site, which might take you an hour, it might take you 10 people for 2 months to pick every single weed on that site, so it's just not possible.
Thought of keeping your smaller sites for manual removal on those rainy days? I don't know what your sites are,
I don't think that would be a very wise decision to do that on purpose, but for rainy days, there is, I don't think it would be a wise decision to well, let's save this one, we won't spray, we'll manually pick this.
Right.
And then we'll drag it out for a week, that's not a very good decision.
So
As
Not a
far
good
as,
right.
business
as
decision.
far as long-term business
Yeah.
decision with your, in your, customer point of view, I'm sure.
I should
Yeah.
mention with West Fraser, the discussion I had with them is that they seem to really emphasize manual.
And
So
I
they
was
have their
gonna say,
silviculture crews,
I requested that a lot.
and so they really go after it. I mean, those guys are out already.
Yeah.
So there is this idea of observing, reporting, and then dealing with it, without having a bigger strategy. It was very interesting. I thought they had a bigger strategy to their invasives, but what they actually said is, we actually have to invest more, like I said earlier, on the inventory side. But I'm curious a little bit with Bruce's perspective, being previously involved with Spectre, that corporate history piece, Bruce, and also Robin, about the mechanical, some of these other options on the right of ways that you manage when you're with Spectra.
So there's a couple aspects to veg management. One is like Spectra has stations, like compressor stations, they have gas plants, they have pipelines. So the woody vegetation, not necessarily invasive species, needs to be managed, and a lot of that is mechanical. Around riparian zones, all that's mechanical. For the invasive species, you know, a lot of times it's from, you know, reports from our lands people that go around and do inspections, landowners phoning in complaints, or other ministry inspectors picking things up. So a lot of our invasives are kind of reactive. We may know where there's spots and be able to proactively address those, but a lot of times we will call the contractor, you know, when we get a weed notice or we get a landowner complaint. So it's not very well planned from being able to say to a contractor, we want you out on these dates, you know, two months down the road. So there is a challenge there for our contractors, because we want them out, like, as soon as we say we want them out there, and we know that you guys are busy with other people at the same time. So in terms of, you know, the invasive species type of work that we require, yeah, around our stations and that, we will do that with our general veg management. But on our pipelines, typically it will be reactive. And
are you willing to pay a premium to those contractors on call? Like, is there like something
we
within
typically
a week?
do. We typically do.
So you understand that you're going to pay more, and they understand you're going to pay more. Do you have like a working continuous agreement? Say, okay, we need you on Thursday.
Yeah. So
Hydro does.
yeah. So the way that we do our contracting, not just for veg management, but just in general, we try to set up these partnerships with the companies that can meet the threshold of financial, safety, performance, and also there's an Aboriginal component to a lot of these contracts as well. You know, we talked a little bit about going out and, you know, hiring these individual sole proprietorships. That's really not on for us. We do like to push down the liability. I say we, I mean,
Being the company,
yeah.
not you personally.
Yeah. So, you know, we require them to take on more of the governance and management and liability of doing the job. But ultimately, the company is still going to be the one that gets fined if something goes wrong. So we understand that. But in terms of us pressing the contractor, if there is, you know, lack of performance or there's fines, then we probably won't go back to that contractor. You know,
Yeah.
You know, and if it's just in one area, that could affect our whole system.
Right.
So, you know,
So it's
we
about
have,
you're mitigating anything, like, so you're gonna hold them to the highest standard possible. So you're mitigating any opportunity for you to assume the liability because of a mistake.
The other thing that our senior management is always, you know, looking for is someone to blame.
Right.
although we say we're not looking for a fault, when it comes to contractors, we're looking to blame
Yeah.
a contractor. Now, we want to really work, like the guys at the working level, they want these partnerships to work. Because to start off with a new contractor, you know, and the mentoring you have to do, it's a real problem. It's just like that.
It's like training them.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
Just the re-inventorying and
Right.
transfer of information from one contractor to the next, and not getting full transfer and then filling in blanks. And it's just, you go back years sometimes. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So for us, we want a contractor that we can work with, that listens to us, that responds. And if there are issues, we want to hear that from the contractor as well.
Right.
Because, you know, the guys that you work with in the field, they're pretty important, you know. And from a senior management level, they just don't want to see any screw ups. They don't want to see any fines. They don't want to see anybody get hurt. And they want to see the costs come in reasonable. But it really is, you know, we talked about relationships.
I was going to say, going back to what we talked about with relationships, right? An important component is to have that really ongoing relationship with your client, the people who work for you, making sure that that stuff is all trickling down to make sure the field operator is actually doing the things that the relationship states that needs to happen.
Yeah. And every big company wants their contractor to think of them as their number one client, right? And that's, I mean, we're not a shell, or we weren't a shell, you know, but we want to think that people think that we're like that. So, you know, we have these high expectations, but the guys on the ground realize that if we call a contractor out, they can't come out right away. At least they're doing their best to try to address our needs and understand, you know, how we could do things better in the future.
Ongoing communication is key, right? Yeah. I mean, absolutely having good communication, making sure things are in writing, get everything in writing.
Yeah.
It's not enough anymore to just have a verbal agreement, right? Because, you know, there's turnover everywhere. So it's all great and fine to agree something in principle, but you need to have it laid out. And the biggest challenge, you know, by just doing it verbally is my expectation or interpretation of one thing might be a certain thing, and somebody else's expectation or interpretation of that agreement is something else, right? So it's also about setting expectations on both sides of the equation, right?
Yeah.
Just because I say something and I think of it differently, and somebody else might interpret that in a different way. So it's important to set the expectations to good communication skills, right? So I think you're saying this. Is that correct? Am I assuming correct? Right? Yeah. I mean, and we get out of practice doing that because, I mean, let's be honest, in the Northeast, we're a pretty fast-paced region, right? Things are moving pretty quickly, but it's reiterating and making sure that my interpretation of the expectation is the same as the other person across the table.
Yeah. And the customer isn't always right. And although sometimes the customer thinks they're right, there are, you know, we depend on our contractors to tell us when we're not right. Because we have people, you know, that move into the roles and don't properly understand.
We have to train them too.
Well, exactly. And a good contractor can understand that.
Hi, Denise.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, I'm Laura. Can you hear them in there?
No, I can't actually.
No, I can't either. Okay. Yeah, mine's both on. I don't know. I can't hear anything they're saying, and it just kind of stopped. They were doing fine, and then it just stopped. So.
Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Laura? How are you doing, Denise?
Good.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, I wanted to kind of explore some of the opportunities for new contractors in the area. So I know that's a reservation for some people in making that decision to move forward, not even knowing what's available to them out there, but there's lots of opportunity up here for folks to get started. Okay, so the opportunities, they do exist, and I want to open this up to you guys to tell me where you think they exist. And we've talked about some of this over our last little lunch hour discussion, so you guys should be able to nail this. Anyone? Anyone? Some of you are here. Some of you are here.
So we did hear from companies, as I was saying earlier, in forestry companies specifically, they have said inventory is a big piece. They would love to know more. That right now they're being very reactive with their crews. So potentially what I got from those conversations was, yes, if they're already obligated to do a certain amount, but then there's this, maybe Denise can offer some thoughts on that in terms of the forest roads that are going in, where there's shared interests. Where does it actually liability fall in terms of dealing with those? So that's one of the challenges that's an opportunity. So on the inventory side, I'm hearing that quite a bit from the earlier conversations.
Okay, perfect.
Another one would be private land ownership.
Okay.
Because like you see a lot of private landowners that have these massive infestations, and they might not know or might not have a way of managing it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one.
So there's no end to the possibility of, like, there's endless amount of invasive species in the region, like whether it's, like you said, private land is a big one. Private landowners don't really have access to some of the tools that that industrial or even ag farmers or whatever would have access to. Somebody with 3-acre acreage and has a problem with invasive weeds, well, they're not going to spend their whole summer dealing with that by hand. They need to be out working whatever their job is. So that is a big, I would say, a big shortage here. But there's no end forestry. I mean, oil and gas, right across from, I'm sure, utilities, but you drive around in the backwoods and there's weeds, invasive plants everywhere. Like, you can barely go anywhere without seeing invasive species.
Right.
I did a helicopter 10K from Northwest Territory border. This is literally
yellow.
corner to corner.
Yeah.
Where is it now?
10K from the Alberta and the Northwest Territory border. I was on the padded lease, and it was
In the
literally
middle of a
corner to
swamp.
corner, middle of Muskeg, almost the Arctic boreal forest, and it was Santa's cattle.
Doesn't matter anywhere from a mountaintop to a.
One of the things I picked up what Josh was saying is in the monitoring, there's all this requirement for doing environmental monitoring for all kinds of projects. So potentially the opportunities there to partner on the inventory side, or to actually be saying, like when I hear these issues, Robin, that all of a sudden, yes, if we had the inventory, yes, if we had the formal reporting, and yes, we have the solution because we've got a pool of people that you can do that can actually deal with it. So that to me is potentially under your environmental. And I think that applies to all these development communities, right, Josh? They each have their own programs, and then Josh McMoyle was saying before, he sees stuff with as well, so.
I'm getting that there's an opportunity or there's lots of weeds, but it comes down to the money and then,
Who's gonna pay for it? Who's gonna pay for
well,
it?
not just that. I don't want to be anything more than myself and a couple of guys. That's just my nature. But I still want, if I'm going to go out, I got to value on my time nowadays. So I want to make something. You know, I'm not going to go out at $25 an hour or even, anymore. So I'll stay home. So that's what I'm saying is, like you were saying, I mean, you guys have your preferred partner. And then that rules out any, hey, Scott, can you 3 guys take care of this project for us? It makes it harder for the small guys. So that's what I'm trying to understand where the opportunity is.
That would be coming in with the joint ventures with the local contractors and being on their preferred vendors list. It's the chain effect, right? You'll have the Spectras and the Hydros, and they have their subcontractors. And basically where the small mom and pop shops are coming in, they're the subcontractor of the subcontractor. Because it's just that liability just keeps getting pushed down.
But it just costs you
there's a
guys
niche.
more though.
But
Ultimately.
that's
And I have heard from some of the other organizations that they actually prefer to work with the mom and pop smaller organizations. And find they actually care a bit more and do a better job on the ground, more efficient. So it's just for you to find out who these key contacts are and start your networking. There's lots of opportunity, and you guys have talked about some. So there's opportunity in forestry, transportation, agriculture, utilities such as hydro, and oil and gas, and there are more than just what is listed here as well.
One big thing too is that people that are putting up those big windmills, there's a lot of land underneath those, and they're stretched for miles when you go and see them up at Harbin in that area in Mobley Lake. They're stretched right across there, and in Tumber Ridge, they're stretched right across there, Dawson Creek. So if they attack it at the startup, like they're starting, well, they've been around for a little while, but that land there, if they manage it today, then we're not going to look at it 10 years from now where it's just covered like that pad you had.
Right.
So, that opportunity, I don't know how the government figures out that these people are using that land. They should use it either properly and get Lee to go in there, but manage it at that grassroots, right?
Yeah.
Rather than later on and have.
And a lot of them are mandated to do so. It's just the compliance and enforcement aspect has been missing in most cases, going out and making other people accountable for that management. So I had the opportunity last week to do some homework, and I talked to a variety of different organizations and kind of talked to them about their contracting opportunities up here in the Northeast. And the first group I talked to is the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations. And we have Denise joining us. Denise Mclean is based out of Prince George, and she's the invasive plant specialist for the North. And so I was such a mouthful. I'm just going to call them the Ministry of Forests, insinuating that entire title there. But so what they do is they carry out management activities on the forestry roads and some of the forestry rec sites. So all the roadways on the forestry roads. And their contract types, and for most Crown organizations, the contract types are quite similar. So they'll issue inventory and surveys. So you'll go out I've actually heard that there are inventory contracts more in the south part of the province, but you'll be assigned an area and you'll essentially drive the roads and look for all of the invasive plants in a certain given area. So that would be an inventory contract. Most of them are based on treatment. So when you're given a site, you'd go out to the site, you'd survey the site and update the survey. So that's kind of indicating whether or not there's new invasive plants, what's there, the size, the density, giving a kind of a description of the site. So you'll do the survey, and then you'll be assigned to do a treatment. And in most cases, it's a chemical application treatment because it's pretty efficient. Especially if you're using residual herbicides, you can get kind of a multi-year use trying to kill some of this the residual plants that will come up in the spring or whatnot. And in other cases, they've issued manual treatment, so strictly going out and hand pulling or brush cutting and doing that sort of stuff. In addition to that, they like to have their data entered into the invasive alien plant program. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with IAP. So this is housed by the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations, and it's a provincial database where many user groups can enter their invasive plant information. It's a great tool. It has a map display to it, so you can actually go on the map interface, zoom into a certain area, and see what invasive plants are in that area. And you can also extract data. So if you're wanting to create a shapefile to load into your GPS or onto your Google Earth map thing on your iPad, you can do that. You can extract the data of all the known sites in that area. And that's not to say that's the only plants that are there, but it gives you an idea of where some of the infestations are.
Is this the report a weed?
It's linked to report of weed.
Linked to report a weed.
Yeah. So as land managers, they have access to more than just the report of weed. They get to go into a data entry module.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're doing contracting work and you want to upload your data, we don't recommend that you use the report a week function. That you get in touch with the ministry and they'll set you up with that data entry. So just to give you some dollar values. So last year, the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations issued about $100,000 in invasive plant management contracts in the north. So within those contracts, it was for inventory, surveying, treatment, and a bit of monitoring, and then the data entry. And they required 2 passes. We talked a little bit about the efficacy, and if Denise wants, she can explain a bit more about that. But they issued 4 larger contracts last year, and each one had a 3-year renewal clause. So they could assess at the end of the first contract year whether or not, based on performance, they wanted to renew that contract with that contractor for the following years. And then they issued 2 smaller contracts. And I believe when we talk about the small and large contracts, it's based on a geographic area. So the larger ones cover quite a bit more area, and they require the payment for them was a bit higher than the smaller contract. So I'm going to hand it over to Denise. Denise, if you wanted to speak a bit about your contract, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So as Colleen said, that we do have larger contracts and smaller ones. Our smaller ones are under $5,000. They're very targeted. They do either inventory or treatment. And our big ones are, we've divided the Northeast area into 4 big areas. North Peace, South Peace, Pine Pass, and the Northern Rockies, Fort Nelson area. The big contracts, you're given a list of sites and time frames on when stuff needs to be done, and you do survey and treatment and data entry for all those sites. There's also contingency on there to be able to do stuff that pops up, unusual plants that pop up, or sites are larger than what we thought they were. They are renewable. They're 1-year contracts with a renewable clause in them for the big ones. All of our big contracts go on to BC bid. We're required to do that. And the amount of funding is, of course, it's government funding. It's dependent on what funding we get for that year. So we may renew contracts, but all our renewals are based on funding and based on performance. So, they are 3 years. Our contracts are a lump sum contract, so we don't separate out travel costs or herbicide costs or data entry costs. It's all in one big lump sum. And people have to be aware of that and understand not only that it's a lump sum, and you can invoice once or twice a month, but that we don't approve invoices until the data is correct. So if we don't get an invoice from you until the end of the month and the data is incorrect, and we don't get that cleared up for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's approved, then government still has another 30 days to pay. So in essence, you may not get paid for work done for 2 months, and that's just the way government works. Nothing I can do about it. Our contracts require that one of the stumbling blocks for smaller contractors is that our contractors require WorkSafe coverage and they require liability insurance. So that has to be done. And what else? Everybody has to have a pesticide applicator certificate. You have to have a service license, or they call it something else now. And you have to have all the equipment necessary. And we do pre-work. And if the equipment and all the certificates and everything is not up to snuff, then you can't start the contract. What else do you need to know? We use IAP a lot. and we use it for planning, and we've had some bad data go in the past, and so we're still struggling through trying to clean that up. So
Denise, are you able to speak about your joint contract with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure?
Yeah, in the piece, we do joint contracts with the Ministry of Transportation. So our contracts have both an FLNR component and an MOTI component. And again, we don't direct, other than giving you a site list and timeframes to do stuff, we don't direct your work. So you have to take those site lists, whether they're MOTI and FLNR, and make them into a plan to do treatment. Not my problem, as long as it gets done within the time frame. The idea of having joint contracts with MOTI is that people can travel down the highways doing MOTI work and then get off the highway and do FLNR work and be more efficient in the work that they do. So they're not traveling back and forth, just doing one jurisdiction. Our contracts are only Crown land. We also do a little bit of parks work, which is also Crown. And they're under the pesticide management plan, the PMP. The PMP only covers Crown land. It doesn't cover private.
Is there a requirement, Denise, for the contractors to, I don't know, how do you know that they are complying with your PMP?
We have a separate monitoring contract so we have independent monitoring on our contractors, as well as our own staff go out and monitor treatments. So, and we have a rigorous monitoring thing. They do have to get 85% efficacy on treatments, but they also have to meet all the requirements of the PMP, which is based on the Integrated Pest Management Act. So we're looking for sign placement, proper treatment done on the proper thing. And one thing is that you did mention, Colleen, about using herbicide. Yes, we do use herbicide, but we are required under the PMP to work under an integrated pest management model. So contractors have to be knowledgeable enough to go to a site, look at the site, and decide not only is a herbicide appropriate, what herbicide is appropriate, but also is it more appropriate to do a mechanical treatment on this site, or should we be thinking about a biocontrol treatment on this site? And that's the kind of information that we're looking for as well. Yes, we want to use the most efficacious and longest lasting treatment possible, but in reality, we have to look, each site is a unique site. We can't use herbicide in the pesticide free zone. We can't use particular herbicides depending on the soil type. So we're relying on certified applicators and their professional judgment to treat a site when they get there and they're looking at it on the ground.
Okay, thanks, Denise. If you're able to hang on the line for the question and answer period after, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
If people have questions about the ministry contracts. Okay, so the next group I had the pleasure of talking with was the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and they carry out management activities on the road right-of-ways, gravel pits, and rest areas. and they are quite actively treating across the province. And again, their contracts fluctuate based on the budget they get each year. So they don't know how much their contracts are going to be till that spring of, it's usually the springtime of that year. And again, they do very similar contracts, so the inventory, treatment, monitoring, and data entry. But I was told that this year they've actually hired two contract administrators to administer the contract. So kind of take that administrative function on, and they usually go with quite experienced contractors to manage them. So that's another opportunity that's out there once you get your feet to your belt and get organized there. So,
Nicole,
yeah.
should mention there on the gravel pit side, there's a lot of these private gravel pits, and Carrie was quite pointed about the fact that there's big problems with a lot of those private pits. So maybe Denise, maybe can you share anything about when there's a problem on private gravel pits? It really just comes down to the enforcement officer, i.e. Carrie, or who else would, if there potentially is a need to get something done.
Yeah, private gravel pits are a challenge. And Carrie, really, the Peace River Regional District is one of the regional districts that has enabled the Weed Control Act legislation, and that allows them to enforce the Weed Control Act on private lands. And gravel pits are a bit different because they are private land sometimes, but they also have an application or under the Mining Act, which I don't know all the details, but they have requirements under the Mining Act as well.
Thank you. So this year, I guess, the Ministry of Transportation spent about $240,000 on invasive contracts up in this area. In the north here, about 200,000 were issued for inventory treatment and inventory, and the remaining 40,000 was for those two smaller contract administration contracts.
Does the Ministry of Transport look after the Alaska Highway as well?
Within British Columbia.
Oh, okay.
No, they do not. No, the Alaska Highway is federal. And it's federal highways that takes care of the Alaska Highway.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, because I know there's invasive weeds between Fort St. John and Charlie Lake.
Yeah, in 2017, the Peace River Regional District worked with the federal highways to have the Peace River Regional District contractor do work on federal highways, but federal highways also contracts directly themselves to do work on federal highways.
Interesting.
So that's a whole other level of potential opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of what do you know anything about their procurement process at all, Denise? They do a multi-year approach?
They do, as far as I understand, the contact is in Fort Nelson, and they have to get 3 quotes. So they, in the past, have relied on the Peace River Regional District and the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Invasive Plant Group to give them advice on what to treat and when to treat it and who to hire. But like I said, this year it was the Peace River Regional District that worked with them, but only actually for the section in the Peace River Regional District. The Alaska Highway section up in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality got missed, sadly.
Okay.
Peeling back the layers.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Denise. So then we'll move on to the Peace River Regional District. So I spoke with Carrie Bondroff about some of the opportunities there. And they carry out the management activities on all the regional lands. So that's landfills, parks, community centers, transfer stations, dikes, those sort of areas. The Peace River Regional District has a strategic plan. So within there, they've kind of prioritized some of their priority invasive plants that they're targeting on managing. So it's just some food for thought if you guys want to do a little bit of homework and research, just to take a peek at their strategic plan. So they do similar contracts, so inventory, treatment, and monitoring. They issued one contract over 3 years, and I think it's in the second year of the 3-year term. So it'll be coming up for renewal in 2018, I believe. And so the contractor is required to treat about 100 sites a year. And the amount for that contract was about $150,000 for the 3 years, so $50,000 a year to treat those 100 sites. And then I had the opportunity to speak with some folks at BC Hydro, so thanks Robin and his counterpart Eric. So these are some of the areas that they do some invasive plant management on. I'm not going to read them all, but there's quite a bit. Same sort of contract types, inventory, treatment, and monitoring. Some of the past contracts they've issued in 2015, they did a generation site management contract. It was a 3-year contract to manage invasive plants and vegetations on some of their generation sites. And it was $30,000 per year, so $90,000 over the 3 years. And then in 2016, they issued a noxious weed contract, again a 3-year contract at $15,000 a year. And I'm not clear on the scope of that contract, but I think it was to treat noxious weeds at some of their smaller substations and that sort of stuff. And then we've talked a bit about, we've got a Nouveau Pro about Site C Dam here, Robin. So they've carried out management on the dam site, the transmission lines, highway realignments, and quarries. And Robin spoke about some of the contracts they had this year, and they did the chemical treatment contract for about $40,000. And then the manual treatment contract where they've partnered with the First Nations community or group to manually remove invasive plants for about $35,000. And those were very short-term contracts, right, Robin? 2 weeks, about 2 weeks. So that's a lot of money for 2 weeks.
And then the reporting period after that for a month or so. So it ended up being about 6 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Did you have anything to add about the management out at the Site C?
Going forward, we're going to be having another RFP being issued to hopefully the end of the construction of the project. If not, it'll be till the end of the reclamation project. So we'll see what the decision is, but there is more opportunities coming up with RFPs on BC.
So will there be, I don't know if you thought this far ahead, but once it's established, is there going to be maintenance contracts? Yeah, so there's opportunity there for some long-term contracts, if you know who to talk to. So, as you said, Scott, show me the money. Where's the money, right? I want money, essentially. Like, this is my life, my foundation. Yes, we're passionate about protecting the landscape, but we're also passionate about our livelihoods as well. So I kind of summed up so you could see in a picture what that total value was of just the groups that I've talked to you about. So between those 4 groups, they've issued about $650,000 for invasive plant contracts in the north. So the opportunities are there. It's just up to you to find them.
Well, I was just looking at that one that Robin issued. And just a rough figure, I'd have to bring it up here again, but I figure you, after wages, at only the time you worked is about a 10-day thing, is about $10,000 profit, but that's like a month going to work too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because you're not guaranteed anything after
That's
that.
just one crew. The company that we employed at maybe 4 crews.
Yeah, I know, but that's back to where I want to be.
Depending on the size of the contract, sometimes you have to piecemeal the contracts, right? You have to take on more than one. But there is opportunity. And I just put this little caveat there that the values vary by year depending on the budget, extent of infestations in the area. So they're not always going to be constant.
Just in the guide outfitting business, I've had to pay guys to sit around till the next 100 payment. Well, that costs you money.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like here, but I mean, if you're trying to keep people, they want a paycheck every 2 weeks, no matter what. So if you get a month of rain or 2 weeks of rain, you might have work, but you might not have any workers. You know, it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah.
I don't sit around either, like I work in patch.
Well, and I disagree with that. sorry if I can interrupt. If you have a month of rain, you can still pull weeds. You can still get paid. You can still do surveys. So it's not as all lost.
How are you gonna make an 85% efficiency and make any money?
Well, you can pull weeds.
I pull an acre of weeds. I know how long it takes. I had chamomile in my backyard, and I go up the shop and go to work, and I say, "Oh shit, there's chamomile." So I spent all night pulling chamomile. I did that for 3 weeks, and there's still chamomile in my yard this year. Not as much, but I mean,
well, I think it all comes back to what Anna was talking about too, right? Like, you have to have that business plan to account for, you need that little nest egg fund for those situations, and just to be able to plan properly for when you're.
But that's it though. If you're paying somebody money that's not earning you any money, that nest egg goes down really fast.
It does, and that's part of the risk, right? Yeah, it's tricky.
You're smiling, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so I've talked to you about those 4 opportunities, but that's not all. I need to excite you here. Come on. So there's other opportunities.
I feel like we're gonna get against the knife at the end.
No. Okay. It's good. But there are other opportunities, and I wasn't able to get hold of some of the groups listed here, but oil and gas is a big one up here. Apparently it's a little bit tricky to get into it based on our conversation over lunch. But I think once you're in it, I've heard there's lots of rewards to be made once you've got that good rapport with some of the bigger companies. There's the energy services up here. So we've talked from Spectra, right, Bruce? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's opportunity there as well. The private land is huge up here. It's quite being in the piece, it's a very agricultural based, I guess. Lots of ranching, lots of agriculture. People own property. I was victim of it. I just bought a piece of property in Kamloops, and I emailed the city saying I've got knotweed right on the creek in my yard. Does the city offer support to manage this? And a year later, I got the email back saying, here's a list of contractors, hire one. So, so the opportunity is there to treat with the private land, and same with agriculture. Agriculture is huge up here. So there's lots. I know some of the I think it's AgriSource, or some of the larger agriculture companies may hire contractors because they get those phone calls from the farmers saying, like, look, I've got this problem. What can I do? And they say, hey, I know a guy, or I've got a guy. So let's go out and manage that. And then there's the consulting companies that also may subcontract. So I don't know if any of the consulting companies here do that. Open question? Yeah, subcontract. So there's opportunity there as well. So, Scott, now's the time. Now's the time to make a difference. So we really want people that are engaged and that care about our surroundings, that care about the lakes we fish in, and don't want to go swimming. Not that you're going to treat milfoil, but go bike riding in a patch of scentless chamomile. We don't want that. So we want people that are engaged and that are passionate and that want to do a good job on the ground. And we also want you to reap the benefits of that work. So,
can I jump in? Question maybe for Denise as well. When you mentioned about the aquatics, because I was quite involved, and so was Bruce with Peace and Lake Stewardship Society. And they have done several good projects in controlling aquatics. Is there any kind of regular inspections on lake aquatics? And Denise, maybe that through environment, or how is that considered as an issue?
Inspections on what? Sorry?
On aquatic invasives.
So I'm not involved a lot in aquatic invasives. We have done a few contracts to remove aquatic invasives, one in Bushy Lake this summer. It was the closest one to me. They've also done aquatic surveys throughout the province to look for invasives. But a lot of they were still working on what to do about aquatic invasives. Some of them are provincial EDRR, and in that case, the Ministry of Forest directly contracts, or with maybe sometimes the help of the Ministry of Environment. Ministry of Environment really is responsible for aquatic invasives.
Thanks, Denise. Okay, so I like quotes too. I can't tell you who Terry Crews is, but I really liked his quote. So, everybody says they're trying to get their piece of the pie, and they don't realize that the world is a kitchen, and you can make your own pie. So, it's just how ambitious you are to make it happen. So, I hope whoever does go forward with this is super successful, and does a great job on the landings. So, I think we'll move in. We've invited Laura Hammer from Cortex Management Services in Alberta to come and kind of share her journey on becoming a contractor and telling us some of the successes and challenges she faced on that road. So I would like to hand it over to you, Laura. And are we going to share screen or yeah? Okay. You share your screen. You can navigate from there.
You're good.
Okay, she's trying to share her website screen.
Can you see my screen?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Trying.
Can you just bring it up, Rich, on the other one?
Yeah, we can, but it was easier if she did it herself, so there it is.
There we go.
You guys can see that there?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could go widescreen, that would be great.
Yeah. Hide all my other work. Yeah, so my name's Laura Hammer. Thanks again for having me. I spoke a little bit about my company, Cortex. So the legal business we've had, my husband and I, it's an incorporated business, and we've had it since 2016. It's sub under 2 other incorporated companies just for a second layer of protection of the business from our personal assets. But we had it in 2016. We just went through the process of getting an incorporated company. We had no idea what we were going to do with it. We thought, well, maybe we'll flip houses. Maybe who knows what we'll do. Maybe we'll have a liquor store. I don't know. We were just interested in having a business of some type. So we've had the actual legal entity and the name since 2016. However, I started Cortex in terms of the actual invasive species control programs in 2013. My jobs before that, I had worked for, I guess a little bit about my background. I have a degree in agriculture and plant science and a diploma in forestry and forest technology. So I'm a forest technologist and a professional agrologist, as well as a teaching certificate from continuing education through University of Alberta. So I've taken kind of all of that. I've been in the industry for now 20 years. So I started as a teenager. In many of your sort of similar things, I was a tree planter. My husband was a tree planter. Then I was a checker. I was silviculture. And then I worked in greenhouses and kind of worked my way up until I ended up into chemical. I worked on large-scale forestry operations in the Whitecourt area, and that's where I got introduced into herbicides. And it was really rewarding to see the difference of treated and untreated cut blocks. That was really sort of what spurred my enthusiasm for this. Part of my job as the little silviculture summer student was to run around and do biodiversity surveys on treated and untreated blocks, and I couldn't believe I, like many people, had sort of a preconceived notion of what herbicides and pesticides were. I didn't really care, but I had preconceived notions. And it was really interesting to see where these types of products can take our environment and help. So I worked in many other places. I worked for Strathcona County as a weed inspector. For Bayer, we did crop studies, and my more industrial version was dealing with Dow AgroSciences. So I had a summer student job with Dow AgroSciences. that was the first time I ever found a summer job that was directly related to everything that I had. It had forestry, it had agriculture, it had horticulture, I could be in the field, I can be in the office, it could be everything. So for me as a little summer student, it was a dream job. I was very persistent in getting this summer job. So when you talk about tenacity, and when I said you need to be told that you are tenacious, not just think that you are, that's really important to have those qualities verified by outside sources. So I was very insistent on getting this summer job, and that's sort of what led me into the foyer of this industry. It's an industry that you don't get specific schooling in. It's not like you say, oh, I'm going to be an industrial vegetation control person. Like I said, I've taken ag and forestry and teaching and combined it all together. The last job I had before I started my company, I was the provincial, the pesticide policy expert for Alberta. So in terms of our little pesticide world, that's pretty much as higher level as you can kind of go. So I worked with the legislation, rewriting legislation, as well as worked with certification, licensing, and all that sort of high level. And I decided I hated working for the government. So my husband and I texted him one day as I'm in my lovely corner office in August with a sweater on because there was too much air conditioning, looking outside at the beautiful, nice river valley in Edmonton, and realized I hate my job. So I texted my husband and said, hey, do you want to start a herbicide business? And he texted back and he said, okay. And that was that. Probably the two things that have enabled us to be able to have a company is, A, my husband has what we call the grown-up job. He's an operator at Shell, so he works really hard. He's put in a lot of extra time, and he's our primary supporter of the family at the moment. The second thing is we had a credit rating of over 800. So when people say check your credit scores, this is the time when that's important. We were able to amount enough credit to be able to start and hit the ground running. So they talk about financing, and that's a large portion of starting your business. I'm in my 4th season now. According to people like my bookkeeper and my accountant, I am your very perfectly average small business. The track that I've been on with profits and loss and acquiring assets and customers, they said this is textbook. When they talk about what a small business needs to start, they all say that I'm right, good, and average, which in this situation, average is kind of okay. So we went from having to borrow money from my parents so we could pay the mortgage and my husband yelling at me because I won't let him touch my equipment, to starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. So this year has been great. We didn't have to dip into too much credit this year to start our year off. Everybody was paid on time, all that sort of stuff. So, and we're in our 4th season. So according to all the experts, when they say you need 5 years to really start getting your business and getting your feet under you, we're pretty much right on that track and that trajectory. So, yeah, I guess I wanted to show you a little bit about my website because I'm of that generation, I guess, where we just put everything out there. We don't really keep much secret and we share everything. So I put on my website here just a little bit. I know everyone likes stories, so I do try to incorporate a lot of stories into what I do. So there's a little story about how we kind of came to be and everything. The services we provide are industrial, commercial. We're kind of cutting back on the residential because I hate them. And integrated pest management consulting. So when we talk about competition, everyone sitting around the table there, if you want all the acreage owners and you want all the residential, go for it. You can have it, no problem. I'd rather not be working. So, but one way that I've sort of diversified myself is that I do offer applicator training as well. So in Alberta, we have something called the authorized assistant, where people can get their guys certified up relatively quickly. So I'm authorized by Alberta Environment to administer that certificate and that course, and the test as well as the certificates right on hand at the time. Something else, Lakeland College is the entity that deals with all of our licensing. So I was very fortunate this year to be added to their contracted teaching staff to be providing credit courses for our applicators. So I'm looking forward to increasing my teaching component as well. So I heard you guys talking a little bit about safety and all of your different things you need to have, and I just wanted to kind of show you just a little bit of some of the few things that I just put out there so that companies know right away what we have. So yeah, we do have to deal with ISN. We have to pay our $900 and get nothing for it. ComplyWorks, because every company is on a different safety program. So not only do I have to have my own safety program, it does have to be validated by all different groups, and no one can ever just, have one. They have to have 7 different safety companies that they go through. So, and of course, I wish I was the person that invented that concept of we will manage all your contractors because they make a killing. In Alberta, we have you have to have a service registration, so that entitles you to have a business. That's essentially like your provincial business license. If you do not have that and you spray, you're spraying illegally. So professionalism in the industry is always an issue that we're fighting. And that's something that I like to make sure that I always put forward, and why I love teaching applicators, because I want more certified applicators out there. Because if people are out there and they're certified, then they're probably going to report the people who are not certified. And if they have to go through all of the efforts that we have to go through to be professional and right, when they see someone skimming off the top and cheating the system, usually they're a little more apt to make a phone call. So more certified applicators, the better. So a lot of it comes to, in my industry, because I have an education in agriculture and forestry, I'm required by law to have a professional designation. So if you are someone with absolutely zero education and you go get your pesticide license and you start spraying land, you're fine. Because I have a degree and a diploma, if I get my pesticide license and I go out and start spraying, then I'm functioning illegal unless I join these professional associations. And again, they take my money and I get nothing for it. I'm not saying to never not get an education. It's definitely what's, I think, set me apart from a lot of other people that I work with. And I'm so sorry. I think my children are coming home right now. It's just something to be aware of, that there's all these sort of little loopholes and gray areas and things that you really do have to investigate. You guys were talking a bit about insurance. So we have a $5 million insurance. And the biggest issue with that I've come across is dealing with something called pollution potential. So if you're looking at having a business and you're dealing with your insurance, then you need to have pollution potential. Your general umbrella liability will only cover you for something like a spill. It will not cover you for drift. So drift is considered pollution, whereas spill is not. So if I'm spraying next to a farmer's field and I do not have pollution liability and I drift and wreck his crop, then my insurance will not cover that. But if I go and I dump an entire tank of chemical on his crop, my insurance will cover that. So these are some, again, those little things that make a difference. Also, a really strange little thing is my insurance company said they give me a bit of discount because we use all boomless nozzles. We don't use any hardware booms. We use all boomless nozzles. So that's really good for working around infrastructure and things like that. Yeah, moving forward. We're talking a little bit about careers and staff and human resources. So I'm a very get to the point, straight kind of person. So this is not the job if you cannot pass a drug test. Plain and simple. I've had issues with people not passing the drug test. I've had people situations where people can't physically take a drug test. They can't pee in a cup. I don't know how I'm supposed to explain that to CNRL, but yeah. So I guess probably my biggest learning this year was I am now of the age where my summer students could be my children. So I'm entering into the millennials and the generation issues, and it seemed very obvious this year. It never seemed so obvious. So that's my new quest is in dealing with staff, is how to motivate this generation and help them to be the best. And that is my son. That's Wolfgang. Go on, sweetie. Go empty your lunch. My daughter's Salix, which, if you know, that means willow if you're tree people. So we're tree people, and that's Wolfgang. So a couple other things. Photos, I've noticed if you're looking, I think a website is a great tool. People will honestly just kind of go there and poke around. Photos, in terms of your advertising, a picture says 1,000 words, right? So, and they tell a story usually of what's sort of going on with, I try to put in a lot of little captions, and the cool places we go. We get to go to Sundry, no more offices needed, the interesting things like we've done work for the military, in Edmonton, and all the different types of places we've, that's our lunch break. It's pretty cool places. So it's really rewarding. It was really exciting starting. I loved making my logo and getting my little business cards, and that was all fun. And you have all this energy coming right out the gate. That wanes very quickly. You have to be able to take a lot of punishment, because a lot will knock you down. And it is, when I had mentioned before, it is very trying on your family. So, I've had when I've tucked my daughter into bed and she said, "Mommy, why did you start a company? I never get to see you." She knows what she's doing. She knows exactly what she's doing. So that's kind of fun. You need to understand that when you say, "Oh, you have the freedom," I'm sorry, I really have to disagree with that. What you're doing when you sign up for this is you have now enslaved yourself, and that is by choice. So you need to be extremely passionate about the subject matter to go forward with this. And now I had been in the industry for, 16 years before I decided to start a company, that it took all that effort and all that education for me to have the guts to be able to do it. But I've met people, I know a girl who, she was an admin assistant, she hated her job, she got a pesticide applicator license, started a job, and I'll let you know, she just sold her company definitely well into the 3 figures this year. So it really can be the big spectrum. Some things that I wish I'd known starting, I think I really did not, I was prepared for what all the work was. I was prepared for how hard things was. I was not prepared for how hard it would be on my husband. I will just state he's amazing. That's the only thing I can say about him. But here he is. He's the main breadwinner of our family. He has a wife that's gone all the time. I hate the house as it is. I hate housework. Why would I be doing this if I'm a house cookie person? So, here he comes, and he's been pretty much everything. And a lot of times he's been a single parent, because I'm ruled by the weather. And when you do this job, you are ruled by the weather. So if you have issues like you need to go to a family reunion, but you've committed to this customer and you've been rained out for 3 days, and now the only day you can go is this one day when you have this family reunion, you have to say no to the family reunion. And if you're not prepared to make those types of sacrifices, then this is not the job for you. There is light at the end of the tunnel when you can start doing more delegating, when you can have be a bit larger and have that staff. Right now, I'm still the jack of all trades. So I do the mechanics. I could be cleaning a toilet one day, and I could be talking to the Minister of Environment the next, and pretty much everything in between. But like I said, we'll be going into our 5th season here, and I see we've been going up a hill, and I can see the light and just about coming over the top of the hill. So it's not that it's going to be easy. As soon as you think it's going to be easier, a whole new set of challenges will come. Do I need a bigger space? Do I need to buy that other truck? Am I going to rent vehicles or am I going to buy them? How am I going to attract a new type of employee? Things like that. So it does get better, but it is for the long haul, and it's exhausting. I'm not going to lie. I love the winter. In the winter, I'm a ski instructor. And yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have any questions, but yeah, probably my little
thank you,
adventure.
Laura, for sharing your experience and being so candid about it. I'm sure a lot of people here appreciate your honesty. So
no problem.
Thank you about that. So we thought it would just be a good opportunity now to open the floor to you folks and the people online with any questions you have from what we've covered from this morning and this afternoon. And Denise is staying online to answer any questions you have about the Ministry of Forest contracts. So
I think Denise wanted kind of a roundabout to see who everyone is, because she of course missed that this morning.
Oh, sure.
And then I'd like to hear if anybody has any thoughts about the next who should be here at the next applied session. I think was something you wanted to get to, or did this open up? Did this open up some ideas of who you think we should be in contact with, or that you're going to talk to about this opportunity? I think Denise wanted a little bit of a lay of the land about that. I think Reg was texting me.
For sure. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and do another roundtable introductions for Denise? So we'll start here with Samara.
Denise.
We've got Laura on the screen, but
Okay.
Denise is there.
All right.
You have to speak to her.
My name is Samara. I work for IVT Systems. We are a software company that built a vegetation management suite for vegetation companies.
So data entry is the big.
Well, it creates application records, time tickets, invoice from there. You can upload your invoices to different platforms that the oil companies use. And it manages site lists.
Lee Nofstiger with Melbourne Vegetation. We've been in the industry for a number of years in the Peace region. Yeah, not sure.
We've been contracting with mostly?
Mostly oil and gas in the local area here.
And PRD, do I understand?
In the past.
Oh, in the past.
Yeah.
Alan?
Alan Coutre from Cheltenham, and I'm interested in invasive species and how to control or eradicate. And hopefully, but yes, I'm interested. I started interest in this while I was in the society for the golf course in Mobley Lake. So, and we were interested in that at that time. And that's what got me interested in this. Now I have time to do it.
Hey guys, can you go get your swimming stuff?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You want to mute yourself, Laura?
So I that's what got me interested in this invasive species program.
Wonderful.
Josh with Evergreen. That's Soto's dev arm, I guess. And I was just interested in the opportunities that are going to come up.
Scott Kyle, just saying, just kind of interested in the opportunities. See if it's interesting to me.
Robin Rutledge, BC Hydro. I work at Site C as the invasives and reclamation coordinator.
I'm Bruce Kasugi, and I recently retired from Spectra Energy, but I'm on the advisory committee with Reg.
And I should mention Josh McMoyle was here, Denise earlier from Treaty 8 Tribal Association, ECDEV, and he was also part of the Halfway First Nations Development Corporation. So they're bringing a message from this directly back to that circle of people, and they also have their own ECDEV arm corporation within Treaty 8. So we're definitely got the discussion going with them. So there was a couple, he had to leave earlier, but there are a couple of other representatives. So there'll be another debrief in that circle.
And he said he has a couple of people or a few people in mind for the next more applied training. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. So let's move into our next agenda topic, which is the question and answer session. So I guess maybe we'll do this both ways. So Denise, if you have specific questions you want to ask the group, feel free. I know there was mention of, what was the question she had to see if there was specific.
I think, how did you phrase it?
Denise, would you like to ask your question? Did you have a question?
I don't think so. No, I'm good.
Do you have a question, Rich?
Well, I mean, I was framing this just in a quick chat with Anna here. I'm interested in, based on people, what we sort of put the thesis out there that there are these opportunities. Clearly, it's been presented that there are these niches opportunities. And I'm just curious how people are responding about moving it forward, or what other information pieces they'd like to see. And I think about this potential, we heard about the partnership potential. So even if you're, potentially you're involved, maybe there's partnerships there that can happen. So I'm interested in just any of that. But we can also then follow up and get back to you with in bringing people to the next level training. So just putting in just any reflections on what you've heard today, or questions that you got from presentations.
Or maybe a key takeaway that is going to be like that one thing that kind of stuck out in your mind from today.
Yeah. Or what else you'd like to know?
Yeah, maybe we could just talk about what would you find beneficial in the next applied session? Kind of have an idea of what we want to deliver, but we want to know what you guys feel you would need, or the people that may be interested might need.
I thought you were going to, next session would be more business training.
Yes.
I'm interested in that with my history.
Is there specific aspects of the business training that you want to hear more about, whether it be the budgeting or the work planning?
Considering when I was outfitting, everything went in a shoebox to the accountant at the end of the year, and I just paid my taxes. Anything would be interesting. I still use that.
I had one for Denise.
Yes.
We talked about that $240,000. Who negotiates that, or is it just a set price for the funding that you do get? There's that number at the top there for who negotiates that? Do you negotiate it, or is that just a number that they give you for, okay, we expect this to be done this year with this amount of dollars?
It's from my side. So I've got contracts that are joint MOTI and FLNR. They each come up with their own amount of money that they're going to dedicate to a particular area. For the piece, I provide information back to my supervisor saying, I think this is how much it might cost. And she tries to get the money. And then it still goes out to BC bid. And we still then have to hopefully get a bid that's under the budget that we have. That's
my
just
question.
The way it works.
About who sends the information, and you do send some of the information to.
Yeah. I send the information up to my supervisor, who then tries to get the money that I hope that I can get to do what I want to do. And which is, it is frustrating. Government budgets are flexible, I guess. And, as much as we would like $1 million to be able to do everything we want to do, we never get that. So we often have to figure out what we can do with the budget that we have.
How could we help on our end, like say the people that have their feet on the ground in the piece, and how is there any help that we could give you so that you do have a stronger stance to take it to your boss and them take it to the government? What's our stand here? Do we have one?
Well, everybody,
I guess I give you two questions.
yeah, well, everybody in the public has the opportunity to let the minister know what issues are important to them and where they think that money should be spent. Uh, that's probably as far as I can go in telling you what you could do. I know that the Peace River Regional District always sends letters to our minister trying to encourage more money to be spent on invasive plants in the north.
I could also maybe throw out here, this is a good time. In November, it's looking like November 16th, we're going to start to bring together a similar table to this, as we're having today with the key sector people. And we're talking about a training plan. So part of a training plan also may look at questions about how do we potentially influence, in terms of project scopes and things like that. Denise, you mentioned about that you have an inventory component, a treatment component, and a reporting component for every contract. Based on what you heard earlier, I'm not sure if you were listening in on that discussion, was this idea of opportunities we're hearing from forest companies, et cetera, around the inventory piece, just that alone? And I think Colleen was saying down south, they've done that before. Are you looking potentially at that? Has that come up just to do like inventory contracts? I'm thinking of these niche opportunities that may just potentially focus on that. Just an open-ended question. Is that something you've looked at?
Inventory contracts are done. It all depends on what the priorities are for that year or that area. We haven't, in the piece, we've done a couple inventory contracts that are just inventory. It's just, it all depends on, what I hear from people on the ground as well. I think we're kind of under control, I think, for what needs to be inventoried. Forest companies are totally separate from what I do, and they have to meet their forest stewardship plans, and so they may require inventory, or they may require some treatment to be done separate from what we do. I look over, I sort of have a global perspective, I guess, well, global as in the piece, on what invasive plants need to be done, need to be treated or managed.
So on forest roads where there's shared access, right, how is that actually handled? Because we hear a lot from people that are on the ground that there are these issues around some of these access areas where there's been a lot of infestations, and who actually does it fall back on? How does that decision?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Okay.
The piece is a bit unique, right? Because they have oil and gas development, and the Oil and Gas Commission is partially, they're the overriding body on giving out permits to create roads, and I'm still trying to find some of the roads that are out there that we think of as forest roads, FSRs, are actually resource roads that are put in by oil and gas companies, and they're supposed to be responsible for them. And I'm still trying to figure out which ones those are, because I'm tired of paying for that, frankly. And when we do, yeah, it's a big problem. We have found a few that do not belong to us. We thought they did, and the oil and gas companies have stepped up when they've been told that there's a problem. They have stepped up and had their crews go and treat.
So there's a direct answer to your question, Alan. That when we the more eyes we have, like I was told when I took this pesticide training, and Steve said, you're used to looking around and looking at the trees. He said, when you get through this, you'll be walking around looking at the ground. And basically that's what we're developing, is a whole range of the environmental monitors. Once they're trained, they're going to just check it in. It becomes part of your potentially your scope of work. they're out there looking at all kinds of riparian issues, Josh, and typically it becomes added to your checklist, then that feeds into this other process. That's why we got this advisory committee, that there's a trickly ability to help influence the scoping of contracts, and then other people in agencies can then lobby because they're hearing it from the public, essentially.
Well, sorry if I may interrupt. One of the things I did want to make sure people understood is that our contracts are not, seaweed kill weed. That it's just the paperwork is just as important, because we can't plan and we can't get money if we don't have paperwork, and you can't get paid if you don't have proper paperwork. The biggest issue we run into is not that we don't have contractors that are good at, managing weeds. We have unfortunately run into contractors that are really not that good at paperwork, and we will not pay unless the paperwork is done. So really important.
So who's responsible for mining roads? I know we don't have too much of that in East Country. On a
Mining roads?
Road, yeah, who's responsible for that?
The mine.
Mine is it?
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about mining sector today, but we do have a lot of the mines, as we know. We'd have to have another level of discussion, potentially through our NETAC. We're calling it a Northeast Invasives Advisory Committee. So I think we need to have the voice there and talk about how they're doing it. I do also want to mention that Twin Sisters Nursery, who the joint venture between Soto and West Moberly, have a real keen. They're not here, but they are here. They're listening very carefully because they're now doing it. Soto and West Moberly are leading on a whole reclamation initiative. Obviously, they've got very strong partnerships with the industry that have enabled that. And they're on the radar saying, well, if we're going to be reclamation, we want to be watching for this. And obviously, they're trying to promote native plant restoration. So another natural segue to this, building a critical mass. So I'm taking away some of these key messages and stuff. But paper is king. And like Denise, you're mentioning, they're got to do the reporting. We talked about when we were putting the invitation out that maybe data entry alone. You got the administrative people that are really good on that. Is that potentially an opportunity to split? Is there any ways to enable that as a winter, where potentially companies could sub out some of that to another potential contractor?
I encourage any invasive plant contractor that doesn't feel that they're good at paperwork to please get somebody else to do it that's good at it. But it has to be done throughout the season. Like I said, when we have people do our inventory and treatment contracts, part of that contract is data entry, and it has to be done. And in our case, we have it, our contracts say your data entry must be done by 9 a.m. every Monday morning, period. I don't care if it's a holiday. It's got to be done.
Samara, is that something?
Also, can I just offer something?
Oh,
I was going to say often it's a legal requirement that you're not supposed to leave the site without the records taken.
Yes, that's true.
So.
Sorry, you broke up, Laura.
Sorry?
Can you say that again? You broke up. Can you say that again?
It's actually illegal, at least in Alberta, but it's a legal requirement that you will not leave the site unless the paperwork is complete, unless the spray record is complete. So I know, like we do work for Alberta Environment as well. We have to do our own regular record keeping, which is fine, which we do right there. But then we have to input everything onto tablet, GPS point line areas and all that sort of stuff. But you have to plan for that as part of your work. So on jobs like that, where it's a one-person job, now it's a two-person job. One person's doing data while the other person's spraying. That's just the fact of it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. If you're doing any kind of treatment, it's you have to you have to record your data on the site. But we also have a requirement to use that invasive alien plant program database and mapping application, and all our data has to go into there.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you have two people doing it, there's really no reason you can't have it all done and be drinking beers by the time of sunset and not be doing paperwork. but it's more expensive, obviously, to have more people. But that's honestly my experience with the government is in a lot of situations, the government is more interested in the data collected. And so I've had a lot of grace with the production component, and the people I work for with Alberta Environment, they know what it's like to spray. They know I have to deal with weather. They know everything. But they would rather have less spraying with perfect information than high production spraying, which is a very different mindset from oil and gas. So that's why a lot of times, like I said, I've got this kind of straggler work that a lot of times the big oil and gas spraying companies don't want, because it's not as economical. I need 2 people to spray a very little amount, whereas I can send 1 to 2 people to spray a lot if I have 3,000 leases. So it's a very different business structure.
Very valuable conversation.
Any other outstanding questions in the group? No? Okay, well, thanks guys for engaging us in that conversation and your questions. And thank you, Denise, for joining us today. You're more than welcome to sign off now, or you can join us for the rest of the afternoon. Is there any questions online, Rich? I don't know if we have anybody else joined us.
Steve, checking to see if Steve is still there. I haven't seen anything back from him. He was the only other person there.
I got a question for Laura. I'm just curious, because when I was a guide outfitting, that's a seasonal business. I know exactly what you're talking about. What's your exit strategy? Like, how are you going to wind this up when you're done?
For the season or for life?
That's what I thought too, but mine came on me pretty sudden. But
I'm actually in the process of being acquired.
There you go.
Scott, I mean, I'm curious about this because it came up in our earlier training about some of the bases that are getting up into the access, higher elevated access. Has
So
it
you
ever
said
been something
exit, right?
access?
No, I said exit. Exit strategy, exactly what you're about. You're right on cue.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just segueing there a little bit in the guide outfitting areas in the piece. There's a lot of, all-wheel vehicles, et cetera, going higher and higher and carrying weeds. I mean, has it ever, or Denise, maybe has there been a weed management strategy around access issues in the mountains?
I've had to deal with it personally, but.
And
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish we could control access better and make people clean their ATVs before they go in strange places, because that's how our weeds get spread around.
Actually,
Also in
my
Alberta,
experience with the forestry companies brought it in. They had to seed in the forestry mixes. I don't think there was much quality control on that. And on top of that, they introduced all the outside clover, which was really detrimental to my horses' health.
whenever it comes to weeds, whenever the conversation goes to where it came from, I usually when I have personal conversations with people, the conversation is done. That it's no offense, but it's such a moot point. It's I know this is going to sound horrible, but I relate it to venereal diseases. In the end, you don't really care where it came from. You're just worried if you have it. So weeds are the same way. It really doesn't matter. It only matters if you're able to stop where it keeps coming from. But you can go back in history and talk till the cows come home about where it comes. You have to deal with where it is now. We all know it doesn't adhere to fence lines. We have an issue here in Alberta where we have to deal with club root. Well, club root is a disease which affects canola. And if ever you've driven through Alberta in the summertime, it's pretty yellow. And its main vector is soil and dust. So try quadding without having any dirt on your vehicle in any sort of ag lands. So we need to do bleach decontamination processes when we're going through ag lands. So it's just a fact of life. You just cover your own self and keep your stuff clean and it's fine. But it really doesn't matter where it came from.
So we're doing training is a small component of what the Invasive Species Council of British Columbia does. We're more focused on education and outreach. So we do have some pretty large scale outreach programs to educate backcountry users and that sort of stuff. So we're trying to, encourage the messaging about play, clean, go. You're going to play, you got to clean yourself off before and after you leave an area and your equipment and go, right? So it's just making people aware of the issue and the simple practices that they can take to help stop the spread and the introduction of invasive plants. So.
And us as managers, we're the biggest, I would say we're one of the biggest vectors. A lot of times with our equipment, as opposed to a lot of recreational equipment, I have maybe a little bit beefier sort of equipment. I have much stronger skid plates. They hold a lot more. There's a lot more nooks and crannies and things like that with where my equipment is and my tanks. So it is a constant effort just to keep stuff clean. That's part of the job.
Sure, I was going to mention on the agricultural side, we don't have much representation, by proxy here from the ag sector. We have done this outreach into the cattle, ag, grain, forage sectors. So we have a strong voice through our regional agrologist and through Lori. We are here and listening to this. So part of the next process is kind of going through the wash again in terms of priorities and issues and opportunities. Again, partly through our Northeast Advisory Committee. So mining was brought up earlier, ag is there, and we will be continuing to explore what it would be to support that sector more and create the window to the new world of contract opportunity.
Yeah, there's tons of things. There's gravel pits, there's property managers, there's utilities, there's tons of opportunity. So, and we need more professional applicators, and that's the difference. At least in Alberta, we have a lot of people who are unemployed, so we have a lot of fly-by-nighters. But we need more professional applicators, and I would really just recommend, if this is something that you're thinking of doing, go spray for a full season first.
Can I ask, Laura, have you ever done much in the way of job shadowing? So you got somebody that's thinking they want to do it. They just want to get more exposure to identification and to treatment.
Yep, that's called a summer student.
But how about the adult unemployed summer?
They're willing. I'm happy for anyone to come work for the summer, but they're going to work. So.
Yeah. So you can create opportunities. I mean, that's getting around and getting access and getting trained. That could be part of your business plan, is what I'm saying. Taking some training and this co-op model, what I'm kind of talking about here.
Oh, of course. The problem is that a lot of times a co-op model goes with a specific industry. Well, we don't really have a specific educational thing to have a co-op for. We don't have sprayer college.
Sure. I'm thinking ag school, but anyway, I'm an agrologist too, so I think about that.
Honestly, most agrologists, when they're at the university level, they know that they're just going to go, if they're going to go be a sprayer, their job is to make money. That's what they want. So they're going to get lots of experience doing it too, but they need to be motivated by money, because you can have a really fun summer, you can have a really crappy summer, but if money's not your motivator, you're not going to last.
Great.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll wrap that up. If you guys have any further questions at a later date, I'll try and help you out there. So, is there a way to pull this presentation up?
Yes.
Okay, I'm leaving for swimming. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
I'm leaving as well. Thanks, everybody. If you have any more questions, you can always phone me.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Have a good afternoon, Denise. Stop the screen sharing. It's just.
That's true.
We don't really need to.
Well, no, I can talk
but
off
we
my,
can talk.
I can talk off my
I'd
side.
like to direct
Gonna take a minute.
There's more coffee, folks. if
Yeah,
people
take
wanna
this
do
time to have
it.
a 5-minute coffee break. Use the washroom.
Grab a snack.
There's lots of guys. Lots of fruit and vegetables in the
Just gonna turn